All right. Once again, welcome to the Citizen Soldier Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Scott Paulson, the Rooster of Tucson, here to wake you up. Once again, coming to you live from Hack Studios in Tucson, Arizona, Arizona's #1 source of uncompromised news. And this show right here is for the aware, for the disciplined and the connected. Once again, regular citizens who refuse to watch their neighborhoods decline. And once again, we are here with your Tucson Signal Boost. That's right, straight facts from the streets this week. We had a homicide, a strangulation case. It says Tucson police identified the victim in a homicide as 28-year-old Caitlin Roy. Officers responded to the 600 block of North Dodge Boulevard just before 6 p.m. on Monday, April 13th. They found Roy's body with apparent strangulation trauma. The detectives arrested 32-year-old Martine Mayerquin on suspicions of domestic violence, first-degree murder, and one man is dead after an officer-involved shooting on the 2700 block of South Park Avenue on Friday. Officers responded to a report of a suspicious man acting agitated near community members. The man was armed with a knife and refused repeated commands to drop it. And after non-lethal options failed, an officer-involved shooting occurred. The man was transported to the hospital and later died from his injuries. No officers or community members were injured during this altercation. The Pima Regional Critical Incident Team is actually investigating as of now. As well as we had a fatal vehicle collision on East Valencia Road. Tucson police made a second arrest actually, in the fatal collision that happened on East Valencia Road and South Country Club Road. A 16-year-old was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, 2 counts of endangerment, and 2 counts of aggravated assault after allegedly driving a multicolored Dodge Charger at excessive speeds and fleeing the scene. The teen was booked into the Pima County Juvenile Detention Center, and the investigation remains ongoing. As well as we had Tucson Police SWAT responded to a home invasion in the 3700 block of South Lundy Avenue, where an 8-year-old child was inside with 2 armed robbery suspects. 15-year-old Joni Armenta was shot and killed by SWAT officers during this standoff. The 14-year-old Mario Muerto surrendered and faces multiple charges. The child was safely evacuated, and the suspect, who refused to surrender, made repeated threats that he was armed and would shoot at police before he was shot. He later died from his injuries. And once again, that's this week's Tucson Signal Boost. I know there's a lot more craziness going on out there that I wanted to showcase, but like I said, there's just so much going on. And with all these new applications being silenced due to the encryption apps, it is what it is. You know, we're going to have to be good citizens and inform each other. If we see something, say something, post it to the groups. We have to keep each other informed, my friends. And, today we're going to get into Tactical Living 101. You know, the real mindset shift that turns frustration into action and turns broken neighborhoods back into places that we are proud to call home. And let me be straight with you, I'm fed up. I'm fed up with watching fentanyl flood our streets. And once quiet neighborhoods change for the worse, I'm tired of good people feeling powerless while these problems keep growing. Enough is enough, people. We're surrounded by gang members, cartels, and drug dealers operating right here in Tucson. This isn't a game, and it definitely isn't a joke. These networks are real, they're active, and they're exploiting weak points in our communities every single day. And that's why tactical living isn't optional anymore, people. It's a necessity. Tactical living is how we take control back. It's a daily mindset and a set of simple practices, that will help you protect your families and your neighborhoods without ever taking the law into your own hands. And, tactical living in Tucson, it means choosing awareness every single day. It starts the moment you wake up. Before you leave the house, you take a quick look around your own property. You notice what's normal and what isn't. You make it a habit, because small changes can matter in a city that's under this kind of pressure. And when you head out for the day, you stay switched on. You have to pay attention to your surroundings as you drive or walk around here. You become someone who actually sees what is happening around you instead of moving through your daily little autopilot like everybody else out here. You note details clearly and factually without jumping to conclusions, just solid observations that you can remember or write down later if need be. At work or running errands, the same discipline applies. You stay aware of your environment. You choose spots where you can see what's going on. You move with purpose. You stay alert in parking lots, bus stops, and public areas. Tucson has changed. And tactical living means adapting so you're prepared instead of surprised, people. When you get home in the evening, you keep that awareness going. You take a moment to look around your block before heading inside. You check the outside lights, make sure everything's working, positioned well, because these people will sabotage you. They will cut your cameras while you're at work. They will do everything to get involved in your life and to make it hell. And honestly, inside your home, tactical living becomes part of normal conversation. It has to be. You talk with your family about staying aware without turning it into fear. You keep a simple way to jot down notes if something stands out. Documentation is everything in the Iron Voice Society. The connection piece is where real strength comes in. You don't need to organize the whole block right away. Start with the neighbors who actually seem like-minded. And it's very hard to find here in Tucson because most of them are all compromised or don't really care. Because, a simple conversation can open up those doors, people. When you find the ones who actually care about the same things, then you can build your trust. You share observations, safety concerns, support each other with lawful steps like reporting to the right channels or, improving visibility together. Tactical living also means staying mentally strong. Some days it feels like nothing is changing, that nothing else is going to work. You might document the same things week after week and wonder even if it's worth it. That's exactly when you keep going. You stay consistent because persistence is what creates pressure in the right direction. Every clear report, every improved light, every added camera, every follow-up call adds up, my friends, because we're going to have to keep applying the pressure to these people out here who are destroying our communities. And this is what motivates me, my friends. Like I said, I see this every day. I have children. I don't know about you, but I look at my children and I see the future. And I don't want them to have to deal with the same crap that we had to grow up with, Like, we should be knowledgeable enough to handle this, for our families, the communities that have been here for generations. Tactical living turns that frustration and anger into something useful. It turns being fed up into being effective. It reminds us that we are the solution. Regular citizens deciding that we will no longer look the other way. You have more power than you realize. So start today by choosing that awareness in everything that you do, my friends. Pay attention without speculating. Document facts clearly when something stands out. Reach out to neighbors who feel the same way. Improve visibility on your own property. Stay consistent with lawful reporting. Keep showing up day after day, my friends. And when enough of us live this way, aware, disciplined, connected, and relentless, our streets become safer. Families feel more secure. Tucson starts feeling like a stronger community. And we know it can happen. And that's the tactical living 101 right there. It's not a one-time event. It's a daily decision to live with purpose and clarity. Make that decision, my friends. And watch how it changes your perspective and strengthens your neighborhood over time. Watch. And remember this, my friend, your voice and your eyes on the streets matter. Tucson is worth fighting for. And you are the ones who can help turn it around. Send all your stories, your concerns, your photos, your MP4 video footage to hackstudios@yahoo.com. That's HAXX studios@yahoo.com, because we are reviewing every submission right now, and we are going to be airing this selected ones here on future episodes. So We're going to be breaking down everything, the lawful problem-solving steps together, my friends. And I appreciate all the love and support. Make sure to listen in on Rumble, BitChute, YouTube, Odyssey, or your other favorite podcast apps like Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and over 30 other platforms through our RSS feed. And once again, this is Scott Paulson with the Citizen Soldier Podcast. Stay aware, stay disciplined, and hold the line, and we will see you next time. Once again, reporting live here from Hack Studio, the Rooster is out.